Hey guys, it's Brigitte with San Jose Seed Company, and today I'm going to be talking about one of the most visited pages on our website, and it's our container chart, telling you what size container you need to be able to successfully grow a vegetable, flower, or herb. Okay, so we know that it can be very tempting to want to squeeze a lot of plants into a very small space, and especially if you're a new gardener, pots and soil, it adds up, it's expensive, so you might want to cut corners. But it's going to lead to you not having very successful plant growth. So we're going to tell you what sizes of pots you need and the minimum amount of soil you need to keep those plants pumping. All right, so if you watch this whole video, you're going to understand what the bare minimum size of pot is per crop and why that is. I like to make the comparison that it's kind of like our bodies. We need 10 pints of blood to be really happy and healthy. And the soil in a pot is the blood for those plants. And there is a minimum amount of soil that it needs to really be happy. Added on top of that is the fact that in our zone, we're really hot and we're really dry. So the more soil you can give it, the more moisture it can hold, and the less likely you're gonna have wilting in between watering sessions, which will mean less happy plants. Okay, so I've got a bunch of different pots here in a bunch of different shapes and sizes and materials, and I wanna go over why the size and the shape and the material matters and what considerations you should have when using these for crops. So one of the things that was always very confusing to me in the beginning is a pot can either be described by the size of the lip, so like 16-inch here, or by gallon size. So this is 7 gallon. It holds 7 gallons of soil, right? And just for reference, let's see. Now it's all bent, but just to get an idea. So this is also 16 inches, but look at the difference in the shape and the size.
Measure it the other way.
Oh wait, well, obviously I know it's bent, right? So ish, still 16. So again, that's why these measurements are confusing and don't really matter. I always like to reference the volume, and I just ballpark it. Basically, how much soil can a pot hold? Because in zone 9 and 10, particularly the southwest where it's really hot and really dry, the more soil you have, the more moisture holding capacity this pot has, which is really important because if it's drying out every 6 hours, you're probably not out there watering every 6 hours, and so the plant is never really going to thrive. So just as a general rule of thumb, if you're a new gardener, whatever you imagine the root size being of that plant, double it, triple it, quadruple it, because it's way bigger than you think. And the more soil you have, the better the plant is gonna grow. So let's talk briefly about material. So most pots you get, especially if you're a new gardener and you're trying to do things on the cheap, it's gonna be plastic, but there are different grades of plastic. This pot is way thicker than this flimsy pot that's already bent in, and it's got big old holes on the side. This obviously came from, I bought something, and this is the pot that the growers used. But this is gonna dry out way quicker than something like this that's much thicker plastic. Now, take it a step further, I don't have any here, but grow bags, which are very popular all over the United States, are not my favorite because of that very reason. You can use grow bags, say in like Florida, but here in Southern California, they just wick too much moisture and they dry out too quickly for crops to really be happy. Plastic is a good option, especially the thicker plastic if you're trying to be cheaper. And then even better is something like a glazed terracotta pot. The reason why I say that is this glazing on there actually helps to seal in more moisture, and you don't have as much of a wicking effect. So something even like this. This is a glazed pot. This is not going to lose moisture at the rate of something like an unglazed terracotta pot like this one, where it's literally crumbling and cracked. I've had that pot for probably 20 years. That's going to lose moisture very quickly because there's not a glazing on the outside to keep the moisture in. So let's talk quickly about irrigating and soil that goes in the pots. If you're going to do any potted planting, you really have to put high quality soil in these pots because that's the only thing this plant has access to. So if you put crap in this pot, then all your plant has access to is crap, right? You need really good soil. What is really good soil? Well, I would definitely add high quality compost. You want maybe at least a third of it. And then very high quality potting mix is a great idea. Mix that in. If you really want to take it a step further, it's a great idea to add compost tea, worm castings, a granular fertilizer. Put really good stuff in this pot because it's all the plant is going to have access to its whole entire life. So you want it to be really good stuff. Now, irrigating or watering your pots. General rule of thumb, a pot is going to dry out 2 to 3 times faster than anything you plant in the ground because there's more surface area. Hot air can get around this pot. So you either have to hand water frequently, and that might mean if you have a really small pot size, 2 times a day. You're gonna have to water often. If you can put little emitters on your pots, that makes it really easy to have a irrigation system water it regularly and open up your time to do other things in the garden. Okay, so let's get into the whole reason why you clicked on this video. What can you grow in what size pots? So this here is like a 7-gallon, 16-inch pot. You can do tomatoes in this. However, I would recommend only doing dwarf size tomatoes. This is actually a dwarf tomato plant. We've got tons of different varieties listed on our website. That size of a plant that's only going to get 2, 3, 4 feet tall is a much better choice than an indeterminate pole tomato, which can get like 16 feet high. Okay, I'm exaggerating a little bit, so 12 feet high, and really be a massive plant. This is going to be much better size for a dwarf tomato plant. Keeping in mind, you may have to water twice a day during the hottest part of the summer. Always putting a saucer on the bottom of your pots is really going to help because you can put a reservoir of water for the plant to wick up as it needs it, and it helps give you a little bit of leeway during the hottest parts of the summer. You could also do in this pot 1 eggplant, 1 pepper. Those would work really good. 1 tomatillo, but you can't put multiple crops in a plant in a pot this size and expect them to be successful. Now, since this video is likely going to be looked at warm season and cool season, I want to list the crops that you can do in this size of pot. And guess what? You don't have to memorize it because it's on our website. We actually have a chart that you can look at, you can print off, that's going to tell you by crop what size pot do you need. So we do make it really easy for you. But just for reference, in something this size, you could do basil, you could do beans, 1 bean plant, I should clarify, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, celery, chard. You could do collard, still 1 collard plant, 1 kale, 1 eggplant. 1 garlic would do fine in these. You could do 1 small tomato plant or 1 small tomatillo plant. Again, don't feel like you have to memorize it. It's on our website. And a nice little cheater trick is if you turn your phone sideways, because it's such a big chart, on the side it actually gives you notes on things to expect when growing in this pot size. All right, so let's go down a size. So this one's obviously a little bit smaller. What kind of crops can you do in this? Well, you have options. You could do any bunching type of crop like cilantro, because you're growing a bunch of them that you're going to cut. Radishes, you could do multiple plants. Leafy greens, arugula would do great in this. This is actually a pretty good size to do something like carrots. As long as you're not growing a crazy wild type that gets really long, you could do carrots in here. Now let's talk about how many. A maximum amount of carrots you're going to want in here is maybe 6, 7, 8 carrots. You cannot have them all squished together because you're just not going to have really happy plants. So you can see how drastic I've gone down from this size to this size. There's very limited amount of plants that you can actually successfully grow its whole life in here. Now going even smaller, something like this, you really only can do 1 lettuce, 1 chard. You could do a maximum of maybe 2 beets, 5 or 6 radishes. You really cannot do a lot in a pot this size and expect the plant to thrive. Now lastly, let's look at something like this. What can you do with something this size? Well, nothing. I'm just kidding, okay? I was being dramatic. But it is very difficult to grow any vegetable crop its whole life in a pot this size. These size pots are really only meant to be transfer pots until you get a bigger size pot. You could potentially do 1 lettuce. You're gonna have to water several times a day during the warmest part of even the winter. You could do 1 radish, but it's really not worth it. So the whole point of all of this information I'm going through is to hopefully get you to understand that you have to invest in larger size pots and more soil, because those are the lifeblood of the plant. And just like we need 10 pints of soil, we need 10 pints of soil, we need 10 pints of blood, these plants need a minimum amount of soil to really thrive. And I want to save you in the heartache and the pain of trying to get something to thrive in a pot that's too small, when in reality it's never really going to be that happy. So if you're a gardener in zone 9 and 10, we would love it if you subscribe to our channel so that we can help you grow a better garden. Now, I would love it also if you commented on this video and tell me, what are your tips and tricks for growing in the smallest container possible, and what things have you learned by growing in containers that you can share with others to help them have a better garden. Now remember, it really makes a difference if you're growing in a pot this size or a pot this size. And in this video, I've explained why. Soil is the lifeblood of a plant, and you need more of it than you think for a plant to really be happy. Smaller crops can grow in smaller, more shallow pots. Bigger crops need something bare minimum this size to really grow and be happy. And the smaller the pot you have, the more frequently you have to water.